You've known Dan Aykroyd since Saturday Night Live, the Blues Brothers, and the House of Blues, but did you know he's got a deep interest in UFOs? You can read about Dan in the February issue of the After Dark newsletter. You'll find out about his interest in the NASA UFO cover-up, and yes, there is evidence that UFO activity has been seen at NASA. Also, read about the future of nanotechnology, real-life stories of levitation.
Art Bell in the Kingdom of Nye. From west of the Rockies, dial 1-800-618-8255. East of the Rockies, 1-800-825-5033. First-time callers may reach Art at 1-775-727-1222. Or use the wildcard line at 1-775-727-1295. To reach Art on the toll-free international line, call your AT&T operator and have them dial 800-893-0903. This is Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell on the Premier Radio Network.
And I think I'm about to knock your socks right off, folks. Listen to me closely. You heard John say pterodactyl earlier in connection with this disaster and with the Mothman. And I would like for you to go to my website immediately, artbell.com, because the moment I heard that, I remembered this photograph that I got that still staggers me. And if you'll just go to What's New, it will take you to the appropriate place. It says bird image from 9/11 photos, question mark, and just scroll down. And below John A. Keel's name, the last link says bird image in 9/11 pictures. Now you take a good look at this for me. And I don't care if you're one of those people who says, well, the bird was close to the camera. Fine, I don't think so. It doesn't look that way to me at all. It looks to me like this bird was way back by the building where the photo was snapped. In fact, the enlargement, no matter what you think about how close or far away this bird was from the camera, looks like a pterodactyl to me. It looks exactly like one. So, if you want a little eerie deja vu from hearing about the Mothman, go to my website right now, artbell.com. Go take a look at this, and you tell me. It brought, the moment John said that, it brought this photograph to mind, and I had Keith bring it up. It's under What's New right now, bird image from 9/11 photos. Click on that, and then you tell me what you're seeing, regardless of how far away you think that bird is from the camera person. What kind of bird is that, folks? Coming back in just a moment is John A. Keel. We're talking about the Mothman prophecy. So if you want one, $99.95 this week only with the free foam patch cord. Call in the morning at 6:30 a.m. 1-800-522-8863. High-end electronics secret company. 1-800-522-8863 on the web, of course, at ccradio.com. Now, volatile stock market, huh? We're in a recession. Officially, that is, in a recession. No question about it. When things are bad in the markets, things are good in gold. That's just a fact. Markets down 20, 25, 30%. Gold up almost 30%. Analysts are thinking gold is going to rise about another 20% or so this year. So if your portfolio is unbalanced, and you, as a result of the current action in the market, are becoming unbalanced yourself, and I don't blame you, you might want to consider some diversification, and this company will get it done for you. They'll send you free of charge, free, good word, right? A first-rate audio seminar that'll show you exactly how to recession-proof what you've got left. The number to call is 1-800-474-4259. Market down, gold up. 1-800-474-4259. Seminar is entirely free. All you've got to do is mention my name. Do that. Well, John, I sure wish you had a handy computer, because we've sure got that photograph up here right now, and I think if you saw it, it would give you chills. So if you can make it to a computer in the next couple of days, after you probably slept it for 2 or 3 days after doing all of these interviews, you'll eventually get to it. Go up and take a look.
Sounds fascinating. Now, these are real photographs with a real camera, not digital, or?
I don't know. It's either a digital camera or it's a regular camera scanned photograph. I don't know which, but it's a very clear photograph. Very clear. Now, these whatever. There's the next question for you. How do you? I understand you have a theory about Windows. I was about to say, how did these things get here? But I was told that you've got a theory about Windows, things that open temporarily, occasionally, in certain places, in certain conditions, certain windows that open to a different place, something like that?
It seems these paranormal manifestations cluster around certain areas century after century. And, for example, not far from Point Pleasant is Moundsville. And that's where all of the Indian mounds are, which are shaped like snakes and elephants.
Oh.
And you don't know about Indian mounds?
No, sir.
The Indian mounds are very interesting. We say they're Indian mounds, but they may have been done, thousands of years ago by somebody else. And so this particular area of West Virginia has had a succession of mysterious events. Flatwoods, West Virginia, is not far from Point Pleasant, and they had a monster sighting there in 1952. And then a little further up the river is a town called Sistersville, and in 1896, the whole community was awakened by a very bright light which came out of the sky, and they never had a logical answer for it. Because if it had been a meteor, it would have hit somewhere and might have started fires, because it was that low and very bright. And I talked to one man, an elderly man there, who sort of remembered it, but he was a child at the time that it happened. And eventually the people there, I think, tried to say that it was some kind of astronomical phenomena, but it was rare. And Sistersville is still a tiny little town there. but all up and down the Ohio Valley, we've had a long succession of these strange things.
What would you say was the most recent sighting you've heard of a Mothman?
Of Mothman?
Yes.
I think there was a young man in Pennsylvania who saw a giant bird just a few months ago. He was 19 years old, and he reported it to a local Fortean, a man named Stan Gordon, and that's how we heard about it. There was a sighting in South Dakota last summer. This giant bird was roosting on a tree for a long time because a lot of people saw it. And it was larger than anything they'd ever seen before. And then it flew away. But we do get these reports frequently. And Lauren Coleman tries to keep track of them more than I do.
I know he does, yes. I've had him on the show several times, and as I mentioned, he was on this before you were. that is a coincidence, believe it or not. Anyway, this creature, so then this creature may well still be around, and may visit the area where either horrendous events are going to occur or have occurred.
That's very possible. If this is all related to psychic phenomena, and I think it is. I looked all over West Virginia for physical signs, like a bird that large has got to leave a spore and all kinds of traces, and it probably would need a large nest or a cave.
Not to mention gigantic eggs.
Gigantic eggs, right. And there was no trace of anything in that area. So and the bird also, the Mothman, had a habit of disappearing suddenly. People would see it, and then it would be gone. That's, of course, also true of these bright lights.
Yes. So that brings us right back to the paranormal and these areas that seem to, I don't know, for a time something opens. What do you think opens? What is it, Don, that's opening?
Well, the scientists are working on all kinds of theories about other dimensions and all.
They sure are.
And they're getting closer all the time to some kind of spectacular explanation for the universe. They're just finally recognizing that most of the universe is made up of dark matter that doesn't reflect light, and the stars that we see are only a tiny portion of the real universe, whatever it is.
All of that is dead correct. That's exactly what they're saying. And, it's going to really eventually turn everything upside down on its ear about what we believe and what can be true and what was called science fiction and just legend and myth. It may all come from somewhere.
That's true. And of course, first the scientists have to fight among themselves. That's part of the process.
They're doing lots of that.
They're doing lots of it.
Yeah. So maybe a lot of what you saw then, what were you thinking then? Then the scientists weren't saying things like they are now. Other dimensions were pure science fiction, then. So.
Well, I was thinking a lot of things because I was totally baffled by all this. And it was very unsettling because I couldn't talk about it much with other people. Certainly not with the people in West Virginia. I could not discuss these things. And I was aware that these things were always clustering around certain areas, generation after generation. And if somebody named Jones saw something in 1896, somebody named Jones would see it in 1910 in the same area, and so on. It seemed like it was almost hereditary. These things kept recurring. And of course the historical records were very vague. We had to depend on newspapers of the period, which were known for their hoaxes. It was a difficult research job. Today, many of the newspapers in small towns have gone, and we're not getting any records at all.
That's right. Wouldn't it, being West Virginia, kind of in the Bible Belt there, wouldn't a lot of the people who saw these things probably regard them as evil entities of some sort?
Yes, there was a lot of that. We had a rash of Men in Black cases, which seemed evil. These men would arrive in black Cadillacs, and they looked, they had angular features and a very dusky skin. Sort of like, when I would carry pictures around with me of different racial groups, and they would always pick out the Laplanders.
Laplanders?
That didn't make any sense at all. But that was what people thought these men looked like.
Oh, isn't that odd?
So, then we had phantom photographers who would drive up and photograph somebody's house and ask to photograph the children. And this is going on in recent years in England, and they call them phantom social workers. But they're very interested in children.
That's
spooky.
That is really spooky. That's really spooky. Do you have any best guess about what they were?
There again, I don't know. Because I put out the word to all the police up and down the Ohio Valley to watch out for these guys. Sometimes I would miss them by 10 minutes. And they would disappear somewhere. And eventually, this built up into the Men in Black lore, and they finally made a comedy out of it in the movies. There's another Men in Black movie coming up this year.
Yeah, it's not all comedy, though, believe me.
No, I'm the first one to agree with that. Something is very strange going on out there. For example, I was talking to a woman on the phone one day that I had met in West Virginia. And she said, by the way, as I told your secretary the other day, I said, hey, wait a minute. I don't have a secretary.
Right.
And this woman had been going to people that I had interviewed, and she was re-interviewing them and telling them that she was my secretary.
Really?
And they said it was an attractive blonde woman, I think was blonde, hair, and carrying a clipboard and looking very secretarial.
Gee, John, somebody was really interested in your work.
Well, that
really interested.
That was part of the growing paranoia in that period, which was I given detail in my book and in the movie, But it was a very frightening period.
Why do you think they've decided to make this big motion picture? And by the way, have you seen it yet?
Yes, I've seen it.
You have?
And I liked it.
And you liked it?
Yeah. They of course couldn't do exactly what's in the book, but they did a lot of the things in the book, and they captured the mood of the book and the atmosphere, and did a very good job with the production. I think it's going to cause a sensation. For example, there was one thing I told you I had all these problems with the telephone.
Right.
And at one time, I got disgusted with the telephone, and I pulled the plug out of the wall.
Yes.
And the phone rang.
What?
How can you explain that?
You cannot.
And
unless there's a separate device inside the telephone that has been there for quite a while.
Well, I was going around taking telephones apart. In those days, the phones, you could easily open them up.
Oh, yes.
Now, with modern phones, you need special tools, I think, to do that. But that little incident is in the movie. And many of the other things that I encountered in those days are in the movie.
Pretty well represented then. Obviously, of course, Hollywood always takes liberties here or there and will change something here or there, but as a general rule, it follows pretty much what you wrote, or there's enough of what you wrote in the movie to make it happen.
Yeah, enough to keep me from having the usual author's fit. You know, most authors scream and tear their hair when they see the movie of their book.
So I hear, yes.
Yeah. And the director did a fine job.
Were you part of it?
Not really, because I was undergoing some eye problems, and I couldn't go. They shot it in Pennsylvania, and I was supposed to go out there and, take a cameo part. But I had medical problems, and I couldn't go. And otherwise, you'd see me in the movie sitting on a park bench or something. You know how they do that.
Yeah, that's right. It would have been fun, though.
They shot the film in a place called Kittanning, which is outside of Pittsburgh. And it was a town that looked pretty much like Point Pleasant.
Now, I wonder, John, and I bet you wonder too, after this movie comes out, if it's a gigantic hit, I wonder what will happen to the number of reports of sightings of Mothman suddenly. I bet they go right through the roof.
I'm willing to bet that too. And as you certainly know, this is also very contagious. If somebody sees a Bigfoot going through his garbage can, reports it, very soon everybody in the neighborhood sees somebody going through their garbage can.
And there's a couple of ways of looking at that, aren't there? In other words, I'm not even beyond thinking that these things, whatever they are, might even come from us, inside of us, the id.
Well, that was one of the things that I was afraid of, that wherever I went, I might have been causing this. And
there you are.
Oh, you can imagine my mental state at that time.
Well, in that case, John, think what you're about to cause with the release of this motion picture. Maybe.
Well, what I worry about is that...
Hold on, we're at the bottom of the hour here. We'll find out what you worry about in a second. I'm Art Bell. This is Coast to Coast AM. First-time caller line, you're on the air. Hello.
How are you?
I'm all right. How old are you?
13.
13. Since you've gotten through, you can make a prediction for 2002. Something you think might happen or will happen. Or I will even accept you would like to happen.
I'll get a really high allowance.
Like how big?
$50 each week.
$50 a week?
Yeah. I do so much around here.
Some of them want to use you. Some of them want to get used by you. Some of them want to abuse you. Some of them want to be abused.
Call Art Bell in the Kingdom of Nye from west of the Rockies at 1-800-618-8255. East of the Rockies, 1-800-825-5033. First-time callers may reach Art at 1-775-727-1222. And the wildcard line is open at 1-775-727-1295. To reach Art on the toll-free international line, call your AT&T operator and have them dial 800-893-0903. This is Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell from the Kingdom of Nye.
Regarding the pterodactyl picture that I think I put up, the 911 photo, it's up on the website right now. I'm getting a lot of reaction now. Derek in Cincinnati says, I don't know what's in that picture. Bird image from 911. But that sure as hell ain't no bird. Pardon my grammar here. Almost looks like a flying Loch Ness monster to me. Yeah, me too. That's why I put it there. It just hit me. When John said what it resembled, what people say it resembled, and the tragedy that occurred there, and then 911, tragedy, the word tragedy certainly occurred. And then that picture flashed in front of my mind, and oh man, you've got to see it. So go take a look. It's at artbell.com. John A. Keel will be right back.
Want to go home.
Good night, Russ.
E-File is accurate, secure, and you get your refund in half the time.
Hey, Russ, nighty-night. Good night, Bob.
So instead of stuffing envelopes and licking stamps like Russ,
Maybe you should try a wet sponge, man. Thanks.
tell your tax professional to delete the paperwork and hit send with IRS E-File.
Good idea.
To find a tax professional who uses E-File, visit irs.gov.
Well, with what I've heard, I can now easily see how this is going to make a really, really, really good motion picture. It's got all the elements. And I'm kind of curious. Of course, Richard Gere's in the movie, but who plays you, John?
Well, there's also Alan Bates, the English actor, in it.
Uh-huh.
And he does a little cameo. He's very good. He plays an eccentric scientist. And I think the Gere character and his character is sort of a composite of me.
Of you.
Yeah, sort of. I like the Alan Bates thing very, very much because he talked just like I talk. I've never met Alan Bates.
What, you did tell me originally that you went down there to look for this winged cat. And so, were you doing all those kinds of stories then?
Oh, yeah. I was traveling all over and doing stories about everything I found. And,
Bizarre, paranormal, that kind of thing?
well, that and human interest stories. In those days, there was a big market for human interest stories. And I was... sometimes I would stay up all night and sleep all day because I'd be sitting in a graveyard or some dumb thing because we're seeing these lights in graveyards. You know, that's an old phenomenon. Nobody has an explanation really for that either.
It's current phenomenon, too. It's a current phenomenon. Yes, it is. And I have a group that comes on the program, John, and they do electronic voice phenomena. And I'm sure you've heard of that. And you can hear... You hear these voices that they seem to harvest well in graveyards, John.
Well, they've been doing that for several years now, recording voices. They also, you know, that Radio Luxembourg and places in Europe have been able to get pictures of the dead on television.
No, John, I hadn't heard about that.
Well, it's never gotten much publicity in the United States, but it was a sensation in Europe.
Tell me about it, please.
They have some kind of a system where they arrange mirrors around the TV screen, and when everything is adjusted properly, images of dead people appear on the screen, that recognizable dead people.
Really?
And this was going on for some years in Europe, but I think it's sort of quieted down now.
I've never heard of it. Hey, you reported on that?
I've written articles about that.
Have you seen any of these images?
No, I haven't. A lot of people have. As I say, Radio Luxembourg got involved in this somehow, and they were doing it a lot over there. That's just one of the many strange... I think the business with the voices started with a blind man in England, didn't it?
I don't know.
I think he was a blind man, had a tape recorder, and at first everybody thought that somebody was pulling his leg. You know, they were whispering out through the window or something.
Yes.
But it turned out that many people were able to pick up these voices.
These people that I have on use a lot of careful controls, John. They use only brand new tapes, never recorded on tapes, that sort of thing.
Right.
And what they capture really is totally freaky. I mean, it really is freaky, and they go to graveyards all the time. I couldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. You did it, though, huh?
Because I've been interested for 30 years in a phenomenon in graveyards where the tombstones are knocked over. Now, this sounds like, you know, not very much of anything, but the early tombstones were made to stay erect forever. They had steel rods through their bases.
Right.
In order to knock one of these over, you'd almost need a machine because they bend the rods inside the tombstone and it breaks off. And often, well, right here in New York City, we've had occasions where